It started like any other Saturday. I rolled out of bed before the sun, hoping to get ahead of the day and maybe even do something thoughtful. Tara had been stressed lately, work stuff, she said, though I wasn't always sure what work entailed anymore. Her schedule was unpredictable these days, and her mood even more so. Still, I figured something small might help reset things between us. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and walked the 3 blocks to the cafe she loved. They knew her order by heart: cinnamon oat milk latte, extra foam, 2 sugars. The kind of drink that took 5 minutes to pronounce but was somehow always worth the wait. I picked up mine too, black and scalding, and started heading back home, feeling decent. Not great, not hopeful, but decent. It wasn't until I opened our front door that the weight hit me. Right there, in the middle of the living room, was a hoodie. Not mine. Not Tara's. A man's, clearly. It lay crumpled near the couch, half on and half off the area rug, like someone had yanked it off in a hurry. I stared at it for a second, thinking maybe I was imagining things. But no, I'd never seen it before. The color was off, the size was off, even the brand tag was foreign to me. Then I noticed the glasses on the table. 2 of them. One was the kind of oversized wine glass we never used except when friends were over. The rim was stained with a reddish lipstick I didn't recognize. Tara's go-to shade was always more muted. The second glass was still half full, and I picked it up out of instinct. Warm. Not just room temperature, actually warm. Recently touched. Recently held. A sour feeling bloomed in my stomach, spreading outward like a ripple. Then I heard her. Outside. At first it was just murmuring, muffled and quick. I walked quietly to the front window, pushing one of the blinds down with a finger. She was pacing in the driveway, barefoot, cradling her phone between her cheek and shoulder while she lit a cigarette, something she hadn't done in years. I couldn't hear every word, but her voice was soft, urgent. Her tone wasn't the kind you use with a coworker. It was gentler. Familiar. She ended the call abruptly when she noticed the front door cracked open. I stepped back as she entered, acting surprised to see me up. "Oh hey," she said, eyes flicking to the coffee in my hand. "You went out?" "Yeah," I said simply. She glanced toward the living room but didn't mention the hoodie or the glasses. Didn't acknowledge the mess at all. Instead, she moved toward the kitchen, pulling a hair tie from her wrist like nothing was wrong. "Wanted to get a run in early before the sun's up," she added. "You know how I get when I don't move in the morning." Her words sounded pre-rehearsed, like a script she was hoping I'd buy without asking questions. I walked to the sink and slowly poured the coffee down the drain. Both cups. The cinnamon smell hit the air, sweet and sharp, and I watched it swirl into the steel basin like something symbolic, though I wasn't sure of what yet. Tara noticed. Her eyes lingered on the action for just a second before she looked away. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded once. Then I walked past her, back toward the bedroom, every step heavier than the last. The rest of the morning was a blur. She showered. She played a podcast loud enough for me to hear but not loud enough to follow. She sang along to a few songs while getting dressed, off-key and unbothered. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The room felt colder than usual. Smaller. I tried to piece together a rational explanation. Maybe her brother stopped by. But her brother lived 3 hours away and hated red wine. Maybe a friend came over after a bad breakup. But Tara wasn't exactly the therapist type, and none of her friends wore XXL hoodies. No matter how I twisted the puzzle, the pieces didn't fit. When she finally left, claiming she had errands to run and a stop at the gallery to check on an installation, I didn't follow up. I didn't ask questions or even say goodbye. I just nodded again and watched the door close behind her. Once she was gone, I picked up the hoodie and turned it over in my hands. There was a faint cologne smell, not mine, something spicy, a little too confident. I checked the pockets out of some strange compulsion. Nothing inside. No wallet, no keys, not even a receipt. Just the lingering scent of someone who wasn't supposed to be here. I set it down, suddenly repulsed by the feel of it. For the rest of the day, I moved on autopilot. Folded laundry. Cleaned the garage. Answered work emails I didn't care about. My body moved, but my mind stayed trapped in that room. In the moment I saw her outside, whispering into the phone with that nervous energy she used to reserve for first dates. That night, we ate dinner like everything was normal. Pasta. Her favorite, even though I hadn't made it in months. She talked about a new artist she was excited to feature, a guy who sculpted using nothing but melted plastic. I nodded along, asked a few polite questions, pretended to care. Inside, though, I was doing the math, adding up all the inconsistencies, all the little changes I'd ignored for too long. She went to bed early, said she was exhausted. I stayed up late, watching the ceiling in the dark. And somewhere between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m., I admitted something I hadn't been ready to say out loud, not even to myself. Something had changed, and I didn't know if it could be undone. The next morning, I sat in my workshop, staring at a cracked motorcycle helmet on the bench in front of me, not working, just sitting, just thinking. It had belonged to a client who'd crashed last week and asked me to salvage what I could. Normally, I loved this kind of job, the challenge of rebuilding, the quiet hum of focus. But today, I couldn't even lift a screwdriver. My thoughts kept circling back to the hoodie, the wine glasses, and the way Tara hadn't flinched when I poured her favorite coffee down the drain like it meant nothing. The helmet, cracked along the side, seemed like a metaphor too on the nose to ignore. A protective shell split right down the middle. Useless now. I thought about the little things. The signs I had noticed but chosen not to believe. Tara had changed her perfume 3 months ago. At first, it seemed like a whim. She said she just wanted something more mature. I had always loved her old scent, something soft and floral that reminded me of our first apartment. The new one was sharper, heavier. I didn't say anything. I figured people change. Tastes change. But that wasn't all. She'd started wearing lipstick more often, deep reds, bold colors that left marks on glasses and collar edges. She used to prefer chapstick and a clean face, something she called low-effort elegance. Lately, even on weekends, she dressed like she was headed to a meeting or a date. Blazers, heels, designer scarves I didn't recognize. I thought maybe it was just the influence of working at the gallery around artists and eccentric collectors. But then again, the gallery didn't stay open that late. She also became protective of her phone. We used to share playlists, laugh over memes, even swap podcasts. Now, her phone was always face down, always silent. If I picked it up to hand it to her, she grabbed it too fast, like I'd touched something sacred. Then there was the slip-up. About a month ago, she called me Ray while we were eating dinner. I remember it clearly. I had just made a joke about how she always left the last bite on her plate like it was cursed. She laughed, leaned over, and said, "God, Ray, you're such a..." Then she caught herself. Froze. I just stared at her. "Wait, what did you say?" I asked, laughing it off. She blinked, her fork midair. "What?" I said Jay. Like Jason. But I knew what I'd heard. "Ray?" She smiled quickly, too quickly. "Ray from the gallery. You know, the intern? I was talking to him earlier." Must have slipped out. We didn't have an intern named Ray. At least, not that I knew of. I let it go. That's the thing about love, it makes you a willing fool. You draw lines around your reality so tightly that anything outside them feels impossible. You tell yourself the missed calls, the mysterious perfume, the sudden emotional distance, it's all stress, work, coincidence. But it wasn't coincidence. It was camouflage. I remember one night she came home after 11 o'clock. Said she had stayed to prep for an event at the gallery. But I'd seen the flyer for that event already. It had happened the weekend before. When I mentioned it, she gave a vague shrug, said there had been a scheduling mix-up, that she was just helping clean up. Again, I let it go. Because I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious husband, the one who can't trust his wife. She started posting less on social media too. At first, I didn't think much of it. We weren't the look at our perfect marriage couple. But I noticed the pattern, fewer photos of us, no more tagging me, no more selfies with those playful captions she used to love. When I asked her why, she said, "I'm just tired of the digital noise. Real life matters more." I wanted to believe that was growth. Now, I'm not so sure. The biggest red flag came 2 weeks ago. I picked her up from a so-called work event at the City Arts Center. She got in the car, and her mood was electric, flushed cheeks, a wide smile, the kind of glow she used to have after our first dates. But she didn't talk about the event at all. Instead, she fiddled with the radio, asked me about my day, and kept checking her reflection in the mirror. She didn't kiss me hello, didn't mention who she was with. Just a vague "it went well" and a half-hearted smile. That night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, I wasn't. But it lit up 3 times in a row with messages from a contact labeled T. That was new. She never used initials in her contacts. Just names. The messages were short. "You home? Get some sleep. Tomorrow." I didn't open them. I couldn't. I just stared at the screen until it went black again, like it had swallowed the truth whole. The next morning, I asked her who T was. She shrugged and said it was Trina, her coworker at the gallery. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But something in her eyes shifted, a flicker of hesitation just for a second before she smiled and kissed my cheek. After that, I started noticing the distance more. Conversations got shorter. Our dinners felt more like formalities. We'd lie in bed at night, inches apart, but it felt like she was on the other side of the world. I'd try to reach for her, but she'd say she was tired, roll away, and drift off like I didn't exist. The worst part? I still loved her. Even as I sat there in my workshop, surrounded by the familiar scent of motor oil and steel, with a cracked helmet in front of me and an even more fractured heart, I still hoped I was wrong. That I was reading too much into lipstick on a glass and late-night texts. That I was misinterpreting her distance as deception. But deep down, something had shifted, and I couldn't unsee it anymore. Later that afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table while she paced the hallway, getting ready for another late night at the gallery. She wore a cream-colored blouse tucked into black pants I didn't recognize. Her earrings sparkled like they were new. Her phone buzzed twice in her hand before she silenced it with a flick and shoved it into her purse. "You going to be okay on your own tonight?" she asked without looking at me. "Yeah," I said quietly. She smiled. "Don't wait up." And just like that, she was gone. I sat in the silence for a long time, listening to the sound of the ticking clock on the wall. I stared at the spot where she had been and realized something that made my stomach twist. I had been watching her leave me slowly, methodically, and I hadn't even noticed. 2 days later, she said she had another gallery meeting. Her tone was breezy, like it was routine, as if we hadn't been slowly dissolving into silence. She slipped on a green coat I'd never seen before, kissed the air near my cheek, and left. But this time, something in me clicked. I didn't follow her. I didn't interrogate her. I did something far simpler. I waited. I walked into the living room, the same room where I'd found the hoodie and the wine glasses, and sat on the couch. Our Bluetooth speaker, tucked behind the TV cabinet, hadn't been touched in months. It had a habit of auto-connecting to the last phone it paired with. Curious, I powered it on. Almost instantly, it chimed to life. I didn't expect anything to happen. Honestly, I thought maybe it would connect to my phone by accident. But then a faint clicking sound buzzed through the speaker, followed by a voice. Not hers. His. A man's voice came on, warm, familiar, far too comfortable. I froze, listening. "Wish you could have stayed last night. That dress was insane. I can still smell your perfume on my hands." I stopped breathing. There was silence, then a laugh, her laugh. Soft, coy, the one she used to give me before our lives became tired and routine. I leaned forward, heart pounding, every inch of me prickling like I'd been dunked in ice water. "I wanted to," her voice came through next. "But Jason was home early. Didn't want to push it." He laughed again. "Guess he's still clueless." A bitter heat flushed through me. I paused the speaker. The silence that followed was deafening. The speaker had connected to her phone automatically. The message must have been left open in some app, maybe a voice recording, maybe an old message. I didn't care. All I knew was that it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't lipstick on glasses, mysterious hoodies, or long nights with no answers. It was proof. Unfiltered. In her voice. In his. And they said my name. I stared at the speaker like it had grown teeth. Then I stood slowly, walked to the sink, and splashed cold water on my face. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I just stood there. Numb. When Tara returned home that evening, she moved through the door like nothing had happened. Like my entire world hadn't just shifted without her knowledge. She set her purse down, scrolled her phone with one hand, and greeted me like she always did. "Hey babe," she said, walking past me to the kitchen. She opened the fridge, pulled out a soda, and popped the tab. Her nails were painted a new shade of wine red, the same color as the lipstick I'd seen days ago. She didn't look at me. I watched her for a moment. Studied the way she moved, the way she pretended. Her body language was calm, casual. Not a hint of regret. Just fatigue, maybe annoyance. Like she was dealing with traffic, not betrayal. Finally, I asked, "How was the gallery?" She turned, smiled. "Quiet. Just meetings and cleanup. That was it. No elaboration. No guilt. Not even a glance of worry." "Run into anyone I know?" I added, tone light, neutral. Her eyes flickered, just barely. "No, just the usual folks. Trina, a couple of new artists." I nodded. "Cool." I left it there. She walked into the living room and turned on the TV, curling up with her drink and a blanket like it was any other night. And I sat across from her, in a chair we'd picked out together during one of those long-ago Saturdays when everything still felt solid. I stared at the screen but didn't watch. My mind kept returning to the voice. His voice. Hers. The easy and asterisk Macy in it. The lack of shame. Later that night, she fell asleep on the couch. I stayed awake. The house was dark, quiet, filled with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the mantel. I sat in the silence, letting everything settle, letting the betrayal harden inside me. It wasn't the act itself that destroyed me. It was the casual nature of it. The laughter. The ease. The way they spoke about me like I was a child who had wandered too far from the truth, too blind to see the cracks. I walked into the bedroom and shut the door behind me. I didn't lock it. I didn't plan anything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling until my eyes stopped focusing. The next morning, she made eggs like nothing had happened. She wore my t-shirt, flipped pancakes with a hum on her lips, and kissed my cheek when she placed a plate in front of me. Like we were fine. Like we were anything close to okay. I stared at the food. I didn't touch it. I'm meeting Trina for lunch later, she said, sipping her coffee. Then I've got to run some errands. You need anything while I'm out? I shook my head. Nope. I'm good. She smiled. All right then. She leaned in for another kiss. I let her do it. And as she walked away humming that same old tune she used to sing while we cooked together, I finally understood something. She wasn't hiding it because she was scared. She was hiding it because she didn't care if I found out. Because in her mind, I was already gone. The day after I heard the voice message, I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have questions, I had 1,000. But something about the way Tara carried herself made me realize they wouldn't matter. I could have shown her the recording. I could have said his name. I could have laid out the evidence like a courtroom exhibit. But it wouldn't have changed a thing. The woman sitting across from me at breakfast wasn't waiting to be forgiven. She wasn't nervous or guilty or even guarded. She was done. Emotionally checked out. Her body was still here, but whatever connected us, the heart, the hope, the energy, it was already somewhere else. I watched her over my coffee. She scrolled through her phone with that practiced flick of her thumb, the screen illuminating her face. Occasionally, she'd smirk at something, laugh lightly, eyes never meeting mine. The kind of laugh you used when texting someone who made you feel seen. When she finally looked up, it was casual. What's on your schedule today? Her voice was level, polite. Like we were roommates. Strangers sharing a kitchen. I sipped my coffee. Not much. Thinking about taking the bike out. Nice. It's supposed to be clear. Then silence. Comfortable for her. Suffocating for me. She stood up, plate in hand, and scraped the remains of her eggs into the trash. No hesitation. No ceremony. Just another day. I spent the afternoon walking. No destination. I let the streets guide me, just needing space to think. Every crack in the sidewalk, every tree I passed, seemed to whisper memories back at me. Her laugh in the park. Her hand in mine. Her voice singing off-key to old indie songs in the car. Those were ghosts now. At one point, I sat on a bench across from the bookstore we used to visit. The same place where she found a copy of the bell jar with an inscription from a stranger that made her cry. That day, she told me I made her feel safe. She kissed me with her hands on both sides of my face, said she wanted to grow old with me. Now, she kissed someone else with that same mouth. I don't know how long I sat there. When I finally got up, the sun had started dipping behind the buildings. When I got home, the house was filled with music. Some ambient playlist she liked to play while cooking. She was standing at the stove, wearing leggings and one of my hoodies, stirring a pot of something that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. For a brief moment, it felt normal. Familiar. My heart betrayed me, leapt at the sight of her. Then I remembered. Her voice. His. The warmth on the wine glass. The hoodie. The recording. The way she didn't flinch when I poured the coffee down the sink. And I knew this wasn't normal. This was her going through the motions. This was theater. She turned to me and smiled. Hey, hope you're hungry. I tried that risotto recipe you liked. She served 2 plates. We sat. Ate. No questions. No apologies. No acknowledgement. She acted like everything was okay. That was the part that broke me. Because I realized something important, something no one tells you when you fall in love. Sometimes the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She didn't offer excuses. She simply didn't care. When I got up to rinse my plate, she said, "Want to watch a movie later?" I paused. Looked at her. She was sipping wine, eyes lazy with comfort, phone face down but never far from reach. No, I said quietly. I've got some work to finish. She nodded, not pressing. All right. Maybe tomorrow. I walked upstairs and shut the door. In that moment, I knew I was done pretending. She had left me long before she'd stepped out of her bed. Long before the voice message. Long before the lies. She had disconnected and I had missed every sign because I was too busy holding on. That night, I lay awake listening to her move around downstairs. The creak of the floorboards. The clink of dishes. The muffled sound of another message, this one she played through headphones. I stared at the ceiling, the weight of reality pressing down like a slow crush. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a performance. And I was done being part of the audience. The next morning, I woke up early, not because of any alarm, but because I couldn't sleep anymore in a house that didn't feel like mine. Tara was still asleep when I left. I closed the door gently and walked out into the cold morning light, the sky smeared with gray. I drove aimlessly for a while. Ended up in front of the gallery. It was closed, but the lights inside were off and the sign on the door hadn't been changed in weeks. Dust had gathered on the sill. Peering inside, I saw a single canvas leaning against the far wall, unsigned, unfinished. Something in me snapped. I walked around the building, tried the side door. Locked. A woman walked by with a dog. I asked her casually, "You know if this place is still open?" She shook her head. "I think it closed a while ago. Or changed hands. Haven't seen anyone there in months." I thanked her, nodded like it wasn't a surprise. But inside, a slow storm brewed. Back in my truck, I sat staring at the empty gallery. The lies weren't just emotional. They were logistical. She hadn't just betrayed my trust, she'd fabricated an entire schedule around it. I pulled out my phone. Searched the gallery online. Their site listed upcoming exhibits, none of which featured Tara. The staff page was outdated. When I called the main number, it went to voicemail. Not hers. That evening, when I returned home, she was curled up on the couch with a book. She looked up, smiled softly. "Hey, you okay? You seem tired." I sat down across from her. "Stopped by the gallery today." Her fingers tensed around the book. "Oh," she said, eyes carefully blank. "It's closed." A pause. "They're restructuring," she said quickly. "Funding cuts. I wasn't going to worry you." I watched her lie. So smooth. So prepared. I nodded. "Of course." She relaxed again. Turned a page. That's when I realized something definitive. There would be no apology. She wasn't going to confess or beg or even acknowledge what she'd done. Because in her mind, she hadn't lost me yet. She still thought I was the man who'd do anything to keep us together. But that man didn't live here anymore. I stood. "Going to bed early tonight," I said. "Okay. Sleep well." I walked away. And just like that, without slamming a door, without shouting, without a single fight, something ended. Not with drama. With silence. And finality. The next morning, I didn't go to the garage. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't brew coffee or make breakfast. I sat at the kitchen table for a long while, staring at my phone. My thoughts were loud, louder than they had any right to be in the stillness of morning. This wasn't about confronting her anymore. It wasn't about catching her in a lie. That moment had passed. Now it was about clarity. About consequences. Tara had made a choice. Not just once, but over and over again. She chose to lie, to fabricate, to distance, to conceal. And I foolishly, lovingly had let her. Until now. I pulled up my email and searched for a contact, a woman named Janet who worked with a longtime client of mine. We'd done projects together before. Tara had mentioned her once, vaguely, in relation to a gallery sponsorship. I didn't think much of it back then. I typed a short, professional message. "Janet, I'm hoping you can confirm something discreet. Do you have any knowledge of Robert K ____ from the PR side being involved in external creative work, specifically with the downtown gallery that closed last year? ___." I hesitated before I hit send, then did it anyway. While I waited, I began piecing things together. I pulled up Tara's LinkedIn. Her job description was out of date. No recent posts. No endorsements or recommendations since mid-last year. Strange for someone supposedly climbing in her industry. Next, I scanned old text threads, names she mentioned, times she claimed to be at work. I checked them against gallery event pages, press releases, even art blogs. Patterns emerged. Most of them didn't align. Some events she referenced had been canceled, others took place weeks earlier than she'd claimed. The house was quiet when she left that morning. She said she had an off-site planning session with a museum consultant. She wore white heels, curled her hair, and dabbed on perfume. Same rehearsed smile. Same cheerful indifference. She didn't notice me watching her from the stairs as she adjusted her coat in the hallway mirror. When she left, I got to work. First, I contacted the gallery owner she had once mentioned by name, Miles D. The name rang a bell because she had casually dropped it during dinner months ago, saying she was invited to a post-show dinner with Miles and his team. It struck me as performative even then. I found his professional email online, typed a respectful message requesting clarification about any ongoing collaboration with Tara. I expected nothing. To my surprise, I got a reply in under an hour. "Jason, I recall meeting Tara at an event last spring, but to my knowledge, she hasn't been part of any active programming since July. I believe she was volunteering briefly on weekends, mostly assisting one of the interns on layout planning. No formal position. Hope this helps." It helped. In fact, it broke the illusion completely. Her late nights, her events, her carefully woven calendar, they were fiction. Elaborate and detailed, but fiction nonetheless. Just after noon, Janet replied to my earlier email. Her tone was neutral, but the undertone wasn't lost on me. Yes, Robert K. has been on our PR team since 2022. As part of our ethics policy, we are required to report any conflicts of interest or inappropriate relationships that could influence client interactions. If you have reason to believe that's occurred, please document and send relevant details to our internal ethics committee. It will be handled in confidence. I stared at the screen. My hands didn't shake. They should have. But they didn't. I clicked compose and began typing. I outlined what I knew. The false gallery association. The misuse of time under the guise of professional activity. The voice message from Robert that played on our Bluetooth speaker, no need to embellish, just enough to suggest the nature of the relationship and the timing of it. Then I attached a timestamped log of calendar inconsistencies, screen captures of social media events that contradicted her claims, and a single audio file, the voice message that had accidentally played in our living room. I included no commentary, no emotion, just the facts. Then I hit send. And waited. By late afternoon, I got confirmation. Thank you for your submission. This will be reviewed immediately by our compliance team. I sat back in my chair. The silence around me felt different now, less oppressive, more satisfying. I didn't feel victorious. This wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. Finally reclaimed. That evening, Tara came home humming. She made stir-fry and set the table for two. Wore an apron, one she hadn't touched in years, and lit a candle like we were still in our first year of marriage. I didn't question her. I didn't engage. I ate in silence, nodded when she talked about a gallery investor with deep pockets and no taste. She laughed at her own joke. I didn't. Later that night, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't check it, I didn't have to. The next morning, she didn't get up for breakfast. I left the house early and drove to a local co-working space. Rented a day office. Called my attorney. Initiated the first steps, discreetly, methodically, to protect my business assets, bank accounts, and property agreements. We didn't have a prenup. That would make things messier but not unwinnable. Especially with documentation. By noon, I had copies of everything. A folder full of receipts, timelines, audio clips, and statements from contacts. In the early evening, as I returned home, she greeted me with a strange smile, tentative, like she was waiting for something. You've been quiet lately, she said, her voice light. Everything okay? I nodded. Just tired. She reached for me. Come sit with me? Let's do something low-key tonight. Watch that show you like. The effort was jarring. Like a stranger putting on a mask of someone I used to love. I sat with her. I watched half an episode, then pretended to fall asleep. Her phone buzzed twice during the hour. She didn't check it. That night, I packed a duffel bag quietly and placed it in the back of my truck. The next morning, the email arrived from Janet's company. A single line caught my eye. Robert K. has been temporarily relieved of client-facing duties pending an internal investigation. Attached was a PDF confirmation of receipt of complaint and a formal notation that it had been assigned to a senior compliance officer. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I closed my laptop and walked outside. The wind was cold on my face. The sun had barely risen. I watched as leaves danced across the driveway, a mess of motion I couldn't control. But inside, for the first time in weeks, I felt still. Everything was unraveling now, not just my marriage, but the lies that held it together. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The fallout came faster than I expected. It started with Robert. 3 days after I sent the documentation, Tara's phone rang while she was in the shower. I didn't pick it up, but the caller ID said Robert work. 10 minutes later, she burst out of the bathroom, hair dripping, towel half-wrapped, frantically scrolling. She didn't say anything to me that night. But the next morning, she was on the phone before breakfast, pacing in tight circles, voice low and agitated. I couldn't hear every word, but the tone was unmistakable, desperation. Then the messages started. From her. To me. They were sudden, emotional, erratic. She sent long texts late at night. Can we talk? I miss us. I don't know what's happening to me. One message said I made mistakes, but I didn't mean to destroy everything. I didn't reply. I moved out for a few weeks, took the guest room at a friend's place, filed for divorce, and locked down every financial account she once had access to. My attorney was sharp. The documentation made it easy. Tara didn't take it well. She accused me of giving up and tearing apart our family. She cried during our mediation meeting, not from remorse, but from rage at losing control. The court didn't buy her version of the story. Even her own lawyer advised her to back down and take the offer. She tried one last time, showing up at my temporary place late at night, mascara streaked, clutching some letter she'd written. Said she didn't want to lose our daughter, that she'd go to therapy, quit the gallery world, whatever it took. I opened the door, listened. Then I closed it again, slowly, gently, and left her standing there. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Tara got the house. I got the business, the financial assets, and joint custody of our daughter, the one thing I'd fought hardest for. She was the reason I'd stayed sane. Every school drop-off, every skateboard lesson, every night helping her with homework reminded me of who I really was and what I was still capable of. Life moved forward. I renovated the shop, took on new business partners. I stopped waking up with dread in my chest and started looking forward to things again, real things. Weekend camping trips, morning runs, even small moments like folding laundry while music played in the background. Tara faded into silence. Last I heard, Robert left town. His marriage ended quietly without spectacle. Tara stayed in the house alone. The gallery circles stopped inviting her, and whatever version of freedom she'd chased became a quiet echo in a large, empty space. Once, during a custody exchange, she smiled and said, "You're different now." I nodded. Yeah. I finally remembered who I am. She laughed short, hollow, and watched me buckle our daughter into the car. "You really left, huh?" she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some things speak for themselves.